Hey people, John here from Fast Films, and today we're going to go through a 2019 thriller movie called Door in the Woods. The opening scene shows a woman, Evelyn, finishing up some furniture work for her new home. After she's done, she receives a text from her husband, Red, to come and pick up their son, Kane, from school. Red, who also works at the school, includes it in the text that he has some supervision to do and he won't be available to bring Kane home. Minutes later, Evelyn arrives at the school. She sees her husband and romantically approaches him. Red tries to tell her that public display of affection is not allowed in the school, but Evelyn doesn't care. She then informs her husband that everything is now set in their new home. As the duo talks, the school's principal, Miss Ruley, approaches them. Red then excuses the women so they can chat. Evelyn thanks Miss Ruley for giving their son the opportunity to learn in the school. Seconds later, Evelyn goes over to Kane, who is sitting in the schoolyard. She tells Kane that it was time to go. Inside the car, Kane tells his mother that he doesn't like the school because the students and even some of the teachers are not a fan of him. Up next, Evelyn is seen making a call when she hears the doorbell. She opens the door and discovers her psychic, Uriah, standing by the door. Evelyn gets him and invites him inside. Uriah starts taking out some cards to predict Evelyn's fate. After placing some sets of cards, he informs Evelyn that her husband will soon get to make some money, and Evelyn is pleased. He then begins to set some new cards for Evelyn. Upon reading the cards, Uriah informs Evelyn that she should be careful because anytime she opens a new door, she might be opening the door to another world. While the duo talks, Kane and Red enter the house unexpectedly. Red informs Evelyn that Kane had a fight in school. Red instructs Kane to go to his room and requests an audience with Evelyn alone. He questions Evelyn's method of employing a psychic, and Evelyn informs Red that she just wants Uriah to bless the house and that's all. After their conversation, Evelyn begs Uriah to come back next week for the blessing and he concurs. Later that night, Red tells Evelyn everything that happened in school concerning Kane. Red says Kane is currently serving a 3-day suspension from school. The duo then decide that they need to have a conversation with Kane because once he gets kicked out of school, it's going to be a big problem for them. Red and Evelyn enter Kane's room and inform him that he's grounded for 2 weeks. They tell him that there'll be no TV or game time for him. However, they inform Kane that they will be going for a hike into the woods the following day. The following morning, Kane wakes his parents and informs them that he can't wait to go hiking. Soon afterward, the family is seen in the woods having a picnic. Red tells Evelyn that he is thinking of feeding Kane pills so it can help with his assimilation. But Evelyn says it's a bad idea and she doesn't like it. Afterward, the family continues their journey through the woods. The couple stops to have a conversation and Red informs Evelyn that he has a gift for her. He brings out an envelope containing a URL for Evelyn's online store. Evelyn is very excited and thanks her husband for his kind gesture. Just then, the duo notice that their son is not with him. They start looking for him and soon find him standing in front of a weird-looking door located in the middle of the woods. Evelyn then suggests to her husband that they can refurbish the door and use it for their closet. Red seems reluctant about the idea, but later agrees and tells Evelyn that he'll bring the truck around so they can transport the door back home. Shortly afterward, Evelyn refurbishes and repaints the door to her taste. She then uses it as their closet door. Later that night, the door slowly opens, indicating that something is unnatural behind it. The next morning, Evelyn sees some half-eaten food on the kitchen table and concludes that it was Kane. Red finishes up quickly and leaves for work. Later in the day, Evelyn goes to the store for some groceries and discovers maggots in her jacket pocket. She gets scared and throws the jacket away. Upon getting home, Evelyn tells Red that he suspects Kane's of the maggot act, but Red reminds her that Kane already told them he's not responsible for it. Just then, Evelyn walks down the hall and sees a girl standing across. She immediately puts on the lights and realizes that the human figure is Kane. Kane informs his parents that he's having difficulty sleeping. He informs them that anytime he closes his eyes, he sees a monster trying to get him. Kane's parents then assure him that there are no such thing as monsters. The following day, Uriah visits Evelyn and tells her that the house is no longer safe. He says he's sensing a dark spirit in the house. Uriah informs Evelyn that someone must have invited the evil into their home and that the house must be blessed. While blessing the house, Uriah sees the closet door and asks where Evelyn got it. He instructs Evelyn to remove the door and burn it. Evelyn says she'll talk to her husband about it. Later that day, Red tries to remove the door, but the screws won't come loose. He says only a sledgehammer can break it out. Red then says he doesn't believe anything Uriah says. Evelyn tells Red that they will keep the door till the weekend and see what happens. The next day, Evelyn visits the town's library and asks the librarian about books concerning the supernatural. The library then informs her that there have been some unsolved mysteries in the town, including some missing children. Evelyn then goes through the missing children article and discovers that the last case was 20 years ago. The name of the girl is Maggie Bradford, and the vanishing stopped after she went missing. Later that night, Evelyn informs Red about her research in the library. She tells Red that she's worried, but Red assures her that there is nothing to be worried about. The following morning, the couple wakes up and discovers that the paintings on the door have peeled off. This sends chills down their spine, and Red agrees that it's time they get rid of the door. While Evelyn is home alone, she hears the door squeak and decides to investigate, but finds nothing. Just then, Red texts her and informs her that Kane has gotten into another fight. Upon getting there, Evelyn and Red are informed that Kane will be expelled from the school. Later that night, Red tells Evelyn that he will take Kane to work with him since it's Saturday and no one will be in the school. Up next, Kane and Red leave for school, leaving Evelyn home alone. Evelyn then decides to go over to Miss Bradford's house to find out if she knows anything about the door. Upon getting there, Miss Bradford shows her fear and tells Evelyn that she has made a big mistake by taking the door. Meanwhile, Red has dropped Kane back at home. Back at Miss Bradford's house, she tells Evelyn that her daughter vanished without any trace and she knew that the house located in the woods had something to do with it. She says the house has been abandoned for years, but every trail of missing kids leads back to the house. Miss Bradford narrates that after Maggie disappeared, she took gallons of kerosene and burned the house down, except for the door, which refuses to burn. Miss Bradford says she took 2 more gallons of kerosene and tried to burn the door, but it didn't have an effect on it. Miss Bradford then decides to bury the door 8 feet under the ground, but the next day, she finds the door standing again in its exact position. Miss Bradford says she wrapped the door in chains and left it to rot in the woods, but Evelyn was the one that let the evil inside loose. Miss Bradford says the evil takes children only, and just then, Red texts Evelyn to inform her that he has dropped Kane at home. Upon hearing this, Evelyn rushes home and Red joins her. They enter the house but find no traces of Kane. The couple then calls the police to investigate the issue. Later on, Evelyn informs Red that she knows the door is responsible for Kane's disappearance and she intends to contact Uriah for help. In the next scene, Uriah arrives and tells the couple that there is a chance of getting Kane back, but they have to move quickly. He informs them that they will try to make a bargain for Kane's return. Uriah tells them that they have to take the door back to where it came from because they have to perform a ceremony. Red brings out a sledgehammer and removes the door from the wall. That night, the trio arrives in the woods and Uriah starts preparing everything he needs. He uses salt to make a circle and warns them not to move out of the circle no matter what happens. Uriah then places some bells around and tells the couple to hold his hands and squeeze them when the bells tinkle. Uriah starts contacting the spirits and the bells start tinkling. Shortly afterward, Uriah feels the presence of a supernatural force around them. He tells the couple to sit down and brings out a prosthetic hand. He informs Red and Evelyn that a knock from the hand means yes and 2 means no. Uriah asks the spirit if Kane is with them, and the hand says yes. He asks if the spirit will help them, but the spirit refuses and shatters the hand. A voice then informs Uriah that Kane is in the darkest place. To contact the spirit again, Uriah brings out a board and has letters written on it and places one of Kane's toys on it. He asks the spirit questions and the toy moves to a letter to signify that he is listening to Uriah. Uriah asks the spirit to tell them where Kane is, but the spirit refuses and the toy car starts spinning around. Uriah tries to compel the spirit, but it fights back and cleans off the letters written on the board. Uriah shows his frustration and says he needs the gatekeeper's name if he is to access the other world. Evelyn then brings out her lipstick and uses it to write back the letters on the board, protected by Uriah's enchantment so it won't be destroyed again. Uriah starts compelling the spirit to give him the gatekeeper's name, and the spirit tells him that the gatekeeper's name is Mbusa. Uriah warns the couple that he's about to open a dark doorway and he wants them to be prepared for anything. He informs them that he believes Kane is alive. Uriah then tries to talk to Kane just to be sure, and an unseen force makes some weird writing on Uriah's paper, which later translates to "Mom, help." With this, Uriah summons Mpusa and requests dialogue with her. Mpusa replies, and Uriah informs Mpusa that he would like to speak to Mpusa's master. Mpusa initially refuses, but later agrees when Uriah agrees and tells Mpusa that the parents are ready to do anything to get their son back. Uriah then asks for the door key, which he places under the door. Immediately, the door opens and all the lights go off. Uriah warns them not to leave the circle. Shortly afterward, Uriah is able to turn back the lights and the trio is confronted by several children. Just then, the door opens for them to enter. The trio enters and starts a negotiation with the Dark Spirit. The Dark Spirit tells them that Cain is his favored possession and would not like to let him go. Evelyn and Red offer to take Cain's place, but the Spirit informs them that he only wants children. After some series of conversations, the Spirit asks if they are willing to cause others pain to get their son back, and the couple accepts. The Spirit then presents the couple with a written deal and asks them to sign it. After an agreement has been reached, the Spirit returns Cain to Evelyn and Red. Uriah then warns the parents that they must fulfill their end of the bargain or else they will suffer the consequences. Uriah informs them that he is leaving the town and they will never hear from him again. He suggests the family do the same too. The next day, Evelyn and Cain prepare their belongings and start moving out. Cain asks why Red isn't following them, and Evelyn says Red has some business to attend to for the next few days. The movie comes to an end, showing us that Red has refurbished the door and fixed it in the school so the Spirit can have access to children anytime he wants. Thanks for watching, guys.